Hello everyone, my name is Uthris and welcome back to Planet Coaster. We have a little bit of a larger build today and we are back in the backstage, as you can call it. And today we are constructing kind of the loading docks and cargo kind of depots for the main two buildings back here. It's something that we wanted to kind of do since the start. You can kind of see already there is blocked in sections. However, this is going to be a building built from scratch and in a different way probably than normal. It was probably done a little less efficiently than I probably would have liked, but when you're building something that you've never really done before in Planet Coaster, sometimes the first iteration takes the longest because you're kind of doing trial and error, replacing things and kind of working as you go. But you'll see the big thing that we're doing initially is getting this raised deck. And this is a common thing in loading docks. And, you know, this is kind of where people will be up. It's about bed level for most, probably semi-truck level is kind of what I'm measuring out here. And in fact, we're going to build one of those in one of the live streams at some point. But at the moment, you can see we have this nice deep loading bay kind of forming up there. That is, of course, to kind of separate out from the parked vehicles, so the trucks have some more room to kind of back in and things like that. And I think last episode there or stream or I forget exactly where it was, people were suggesting some rails coming out from the rail yard as well, so that things can be unloaded off of trucks and just put into the rail system that way. I thought that was a cool idea, so we quickly kind of added that to the backside there. And otherwise, we are just going to gray box this whole thing in. This is my usual building technique. I have a few tutorials on this if you guys are new to Planet Coaster. And essentially, it is almost like a sketch for building and proportion and silhouette. So you can see I went with kind of this two-tiered step-in loading bay. I thought that was kind of cool, a little bit more unique looking. It's going to be two doors back there eventually. And also, we are having a few staff rooms in here. These get reworked depending on the path and how the pathing is kind of interacting with this building. As you know, we laid down a lot of this path first, and trying to get some of this to work with these stalls can be a little bit of a pain, but it is worth it, in my opinion, to do. And I thought it would be neat to get your staff back here and actually go into this building. Maybe, you know, you call it a break room, you can call it something else, maybe just the loading bay, and they happen to be coming back here for whatever reason. Either way, I just enjoy seeing movement go in and around my builds, so that is why this kind of stuff is there. In fact, I kind of wanted them to walk around the upper deck completely. I thought that would have been a cool feature, but as you see, kind of struggling with the path. The pathing in Planet Coaster is never really too friendly to begin with, so you can spend a lot of time trying to mess with it, get it to work the way you want it. I would suggest don't do too much at a time so that you're still able to do an undo if that is something that you require to fix some of the problems you'll run in, especially when you're working with these large plaza-like spaces, because deleting a section of this could delete more than maybe you want to in the long run. You'll notice this is a pretty modern section of the park as well. This is, of course, on purpose, and I really don't usually build modern stuff anyways, so for me, by default, it's kind of a challenge, but overall, so far the shape is coming out pretty well. We are using smooth concrete rather than rough concrete because that's the material type I want this building to be in anyways, so I figured we could just do that. And you know, these type of kind of warehouses or storage kind of buildings like this tend to be just poured concrete into a mold and then pull off the mold, and you get yourself a building. That's kind of a common building technique for some of these structures. Just some good old metal frames with concrete poured over them. So it looks pretty good, and we are adding a few, angles back here just to try to give us some variation in the shape, so it's not a complete just box. We're also, of course, going to be running into a little bit of clipping issues when it comes to, say, the Raikou over there where the Tri-Storm is, or Hot Cross Buns, the first restaurant that we built, which does have an interior as well. And messing with interiors, not usually the easiest thing to do, especially when you're trying to add all this exterior detail. You'll see me kind of pull back a lot, kind of make sure this shape is taking up a good enough footprint from kind of above. Some reference images, of course, is just go to Disney World and look around all the backstages. You're gonna see that a lot of these boxes, these warehouses, are kind of there. So it was interesting to try and capture that look, at least for the most part, and I think we succeed in that in the long run. Over here with the train tracks, I wanted these to kind of be embedded into concrete, so you won't need the wooden rail ties or anything like that. But I think that turned out pretty well. A little weird that this kind of concrete pad, it's not a perfect squared off shape, so it can look a little weird from above, but hopefully once we add some more detail to it, it'll kind of blend in a little bit nicer. You'll also notice that I'm leaving the right side there curbless, so that trucks can pull up and hopefully load and unload using a crane to get vehicles onto the tracks. Maybe even if you needed things shipped across the park, could we load up a freight kind of car? Probably, but keep in mind, this is considered a ride. It's not really a functional rail line. It might not be able to handle the slopes and maybe the sharper turns, but it is food for thought if you guys are kind of curious about it. At this point, we're gonna add some nice kind of shades, kind of awnings going off from the building on the left and the right side. You'll notice that I didn't do it on the back wall. That is to prevent, trucks from potentially hitting if they're a tall truck, or taller than expected, So that's kind of by design. And also, it kind of keeps the building, of course, a little bit more dynamic. And we are using cables to suspend this off the wall. I will say the cable was really long. I would have preferred a shorter, kind of steeper angle to hold this thing up, but either way, it works pretty well. In this case, we are using a wood trim to just kind of seal off some of the corrugated metal bits here, and I think that looks pretty solid and industrial, so that's always nice. You can already see some staff members going up these stairs and into this building, and that's what I'm talking about. I really just want to see that movement back here, and staff buildings are a good way to get your staff to interact with the backstage areas, or areas where people wouldn't normally go. So that's always good. We're going to add a safety rail, of course, along the upper curb here. The problem with stairs, and like I do plan to have a stair over there, is that when you use a rail on a slope, it just doesn't look really good. In my opinion, the best thing to do for stair railing is to actually make a custom one. Generally that looks the best because the vertical elements should be vertical. They shouldn't be angled with the rest of it. We're also going to be adding these bumpers. I don't know the technical term for these, but these are, kind of a safety precaution so that when the truck is backing in, you kind of hit this rubber barrier protecting the curb sign. We're also going to put in some curbs raised up just as a marquee for caution through here, and I'll even put a curved element along here, so maybe smaller trucks could just back up to these to be unloaded, while maybe a semi-trailer is parked there for a longer period of time. You'll see that this one is a little bit more complicated to kind of get the shape right, but once you do, you are able to kind of copy and paste it over. So that's why I'm kind of taking my time with the left side, and then you'll see that just copy, paste it over, rotate a little bit, and you're pretty much squared away at that point. So the railing, we'll just add a little bit of a medium between these two loading bay slots. I think that's good to do, and also a line coming out so that we'll know this is one door and then the other door next to it. So, you know, you don't want to take up too much room per truck. And at this point, we're gonna make another custom kind of metal sliding corrugated door. It's gonna be different than the one by the strollers, mainly because I forgot I already built one of these, so I built another one, and it's kind of cool to have variations anyways. We're gonna be using the shovels again for the rooftops. At this point, I kind of realized I already built one of these, what am I doing? Screw it, we'll just keep going. And so this is variation number 2, essentially, the more, in my opinion, industrial version of this. And, you know, we're gonna combine the two shovel halves and even add some slits to represent some windows, you know. It's kind of common to have some windows so people know when the truck pulls up, especially in winter. You don't want to be standing outside waiting for that thing. These are going to be actually named Bay 1 and Bay 2. And it reads from the right to the left, which is not usual, especially here in America. That's probably more of a Japanese thing, but it's just kind of, I thought the more important bay, the deeper one, would be Bay 1, and the shorter one would just be Bay 2, almost as if it was added kind of as an afterthought. You know, they got more business. You know, Hot Cross Buns is a famous location. It's been open for over 100 years. It's basically a historical landmark at this point. So they get a lot of demand, and so that's why we need a lot of trucks pulling in through here. At this point, we're going to recolor the smooth concrete around the more staff sections of this build. It's a little complicated to try and select some of these buildings so that you can color everything efficiently. You'll kind of notice that as we go through this process, but we're going to do somewhat of a lighter color in a lot of these. We're going to leave the U shape of the loading dock though, however, a nice concrete industrial color, just so they are separated, right? So the left kind of staff building and the right staff building are a little bit cleaner, and then say just the loading dock itself. So that's something cool. And of course you want to carry some of the concrete elements so that it does look raised off the ground and actually has a bit of a foundation. We're going to copy the metal framework on a lot of our other kind of modern staff or terminal buildings that we have outside the park, just so we have some continuity as we go through a lot of these areas. And you know, it just adds that little bit more detail. Maybe this is part of the frame that they used to pour the structure, and they just left it because it becomes part of the framework itself. So I just like these kind of elements to go around. It adds a little bit of detail without hopefully looking a little too overdone. Don't know, but you guys, of course, will give me plenty of feedback down below. Modern windows, the nice clean modern windows, very easy to install because really you just need to put them down. They don't require a whole lot of custom trim, so luckily can save some time there. We have just some more trim work to go on, and it's basically much of the same. It's a lot of kind of custom work, especially when you get into these corner bits. Copy and paste could work here, but you know, again, we want to make sure these things aren't poking through into stores, so you're almost just better off laying everything out by hand, even though it might take a little bit longer. Really, it might save you time in terms of corrections that you need to make as well there. We are also going to be adding our upper fence area. I think probably this live stream will add some venting across this building and stuff like that in AC units, but this is generally to marquee off where a lot of these AC units are going to go. In the long run, we're going to have 2 pods to kind of start with over here, so we need to fence those off just so they're kind of out of side of line. No, that's not right. Line of sight. Yes, that one. Words at midnight here, recording Planet Coaster. Gonna extend the parking lot a little bit just to make the stairs make a little bit more sense, and then just marquee out some no parking areas, just some simple hashed lines that'll just marquee off so that people shouldn't be parking near the loading zone. I did toy with a sign, potentially just to call this loading, unloading only. The text in Planet Coaster is just never really that good once it's blown up. So I think I kind of abandoned that idea. We're gonna get a overly complicated crosswalk built across the roadways here. Got to keep people, safe and sound as they go from maybe the storage yard back to the staff building and etc. I do like the bend in it. It's sure maybe not the most efficient place to cross the street when it comes to crosswalks, but I don't know. I just like it. It's a minor detail that just adds so much character to the backstage that decided to keep it. It looks cool, and that's all that matters. Anyways, that's it for the speed build. We're gonna go ahead into real time so you guys can take a look a little bit more in a fine detail, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so here we are taking a look at kind of the main backstage building that we wanted to construct since almost the beginning of the park itself. We're going to have a lot of these type of buildings in different zones, pretty much one in each kind of backstage area for each theme. That way we can get supplies to all of our park in a somewhat efficient manner, and you can see already we have some box trucks coming by with the Alpine Odyssey logo. Though I will say this loading bay is probably a little bit more for a semi-truck or a big rig. The box trucks just look a little too small for them. In my opinion, they might pull up to more of these rounded curbs and then let the actual main bays be taken up with like trailers, proper sized vehicles for the area. And it just looks really good. I added pallets of boxes, some empty pallets around just to clutter up the area. Even added a forklift up by one of the loading bays. You can see probably the forklift can manage on this side. This side, he would have to probably go down here to pick up these pallets, but that's fine. And he can just go in and out of these bays, and there's plenty of room to feel like this guy can drive around. A lot of this is kind of empty space anyways. Granted, I think the pizza parlor kind of ends there, and the hot cross buns ends here. So there is technically a lot of empty space. I could do some interior work, but as I said, I want to save the interior part count for more of the park itself. So that's why we're not going to be doing that. We have the doorway into the staff area. Again, no interior planned, but it did leave it open just in case it is something we want to do. But again, at the moment, I'm just going to leave it like this. And it is really cool to see, your staff kind of just walk through, materialize through the gate, walk through here, and disappear into this building. We added some awnings over some of these modern windows just to add, additional wall detail. Of course, you don't need them where the industrial awning is sticking out, so that's why that's blank. You'll also notice we don't have any windows in the loading bay specifically. That's just so we can have some wall space to keep items in the long run. And then the whitewashed areas are more like offices or back storage areas for the restaurants, rides, things like that. Added a little bit of a recyclables area just as a placeholder. I don't know if I'm going to keep this here, but we just need to fill in this gap soon as possible. That way we can start moving on from this backstage area to the other side, which is over here, and then we can move on to a new theme. But let's see, what else? We I think last stream we built these. These are some spare backup generators for the park, or at least this section of the park. So that was a fun thing to do. We also built custom staff only signs. We went ahead and finished our telehandler, which is over here, which is basically a bigger forklift with a much longer arm. What else did we do? I feel like... Oh, yes, we finished filling in some of these storage bays as well. So, that's about it for this episode of Alpine Odyssey. If you guys are enjoying the series, feel free to subscribe for more creative goodness such as this. Hit that like button. Leave a comment down below if you have any ideas or suggestions for vehicles, park elements, rides, what have you, and we will take it into account. This park is as much my park as it is yours, because you guys have helped me so much over the past year with it. Other than that, this episode's over. Have a good week, and I'll see you all in the next episode.